Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the ethics-based riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. The Liberals know they're in trouble. The misinformation and disinformation over banning run-of-the-mill hunting firearms is merely a distraction overall. The point is the confiscation of legally owned firearms by law-abiding citizens is wrong. It's a deep fake. It's easier than hunting down smuggled guns used by gangs, and it pleases rich urban liberal voters who've never had to hunt or fish to put meat on the table. It's probably a sop to their vegan voters to boot. The real travesty is the claim that the law will stop children from being gunned down by someone with an axe to grind. It is insincere compassion for those who've lost loved ones through the use of illegal firearms. Exploiting the grief felt by survivors for electoral gain is heinous in of itself. It means police officers won't get the practice they need to stay sharp. Maybe the plan is to eventually take firearms from the police the way they did in the UK. Now people over there are murdered and maimed with machetes and knives, much more civilized indeed. Our serving members of the military keep their small arms skills finely honed on their personal time. But then again, Trudeau is driving people out of the ranks as he transitions the troops into climate change fighters. Slinging sandbags and adjudicating nursing home efficiencies isn't what military members signed up for. Trudeau ensures favored contractors are richly compensated for delaying procurements. He's even pulled our fighter jets out of NATO again. Not only is Canada falling short on our annual NATO dues, now he's even pulling out of operational obligations. Remember when the Liberals first took power in 2015? The first thing they did was pull our fighter jets out of a NATO operation, providing air cover for our troops on the ground. At the time, our soldiers were keeping the spread of ISIS, the Islamic State terrorists, away from North American shores. The other thing they tried to do was deep six the construction of our Navy's only supply ship, the Asterisk. We don't know if Trudeau just didn't like the contractor or if he was planning to hollow out the Navy as well. Our new fleet is decades behind schedule and has quadrupled in cost. We've 3 coastlines to patrol, but are lucky to have a single submarine in service at any given point in time. We have no destroyers. Our brand new Arctic patrol ships are back in dry dock after one had to cut out of the annual Op Nanook and return to port due to engine problems. Now another one's taken offline. A contract for new fighter jets still hasn't been signed. We'll be lucky to have our early warning defense in place in 20 years. We have no underwater sensors. Satellites have yet to be launched. And today we learned our eyes in the sky, our auroras, may not be replaced. Trudeau and his heir apparent, the finance minister, have not given the defense minister the thumbs up for a replacement. It's the end of the line for those planes, and if an order is not placed today, that's yet another capability we lose. Canada's ripe for an invasion. It's a good thing no countries out there want to motor on in and pillage our natural resources, the ones below the Arctic seabeds. The Liberals are making plans to embrace their Taliban brothers. It's Christmas for the Taliban. That's the ruling regime in Afghanistan. They bury women who do not live up to Sharia law up to their necks, then throw rocks at their heads until they're dead. Mass beheadings in arenas for Saturday night entertainment have been a hallmark of their reigns. Elderly men buy little girls from poor families to be their wives. Raping young boys is the norm. And despite all the executions, the gruesome sexual depravity and torture, Trudeau and his herd want to help their Taliban brothers. You may remember photographs of Afghans crawling on the wings to catch the last flight out of the country. In Trudeau's catastrophic failure, known as Op Aegis, after ignoring months of pleas from his own MPs to honor the promise to resettle Afghans who serve the Canadian forces as interpreters, among other services, together with their families to Canada. Canada's ambassador to Afghanistan cut and run early with his staff, refusing to attend subsequent committee hearings into how such failures could be averted into the future. In the meantime, both veterans and active Canadian soldiers moved heaven and earth to make good on the promise they made to protect their Afghan workers from the Taliban. The Liberals were totally incompetent, or just didn't care, or both. Even now, we have people we promised to protect running from safe house to safe house, staying one step ahead of the Taliban who want them tortured and killed. Families who've made it out of the country are holed up in hotels, awaiting an email saying they can board a plane to Canada. We learned this week, people assigned to process these immigration documents aren't even working in the department. But that's the only route, that's only the rude part. Trudeau plans to tinker with the Terrorist Act. That's the law brought in after 9/11 to allow money to flow to the Taliban for humanitarian reasons. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments below. And like and share this so more Canadians know about it. The algorithms aren't going to do it on their own. Trudeau's hand-picked Minister of Small Business is guilty of breaking Canada's ethics law. On Tuesday, the Ethics Commissioner released his latest report and determined that she had directed 2 contracts to a close personal friend. This is an open and shut case. There's no ambiguity. As minister, she used her power to enrich a friend. She admitted to it, but refuses to resign. Back in 2002, when Liberal Minister Art Eggleton directed a contract to an ex-girlfriend, he was forced to resign. But under Justin Trudeau, corruption has become normalized. Mary Ng gave 2 contracts to her close friend, Amanda Alvaro. Mary and Amanda became friends while working for an Ontario Liberal minister in the McGuinty government. Together, they worked on Gerard Kennedy's leadership race to replace McGuinty. The campaign manager for that race was Katie Telford, Trudeau's current chief of staff. When Trudeau won in 2015, Telford became the chief of staff, and Mary Ng was the director of appointments in the Prime Minister's office. Ng, Telford, Alvaro, and Jerry Butts are all key members of Trudeau's inner circle. This is what happens when the Prime Minister breaks the ethics law 3 times and gets away with it. How can Trudeau demand accountability from his ministers when he's never been held accountable? Once upon a time, Canadians could count on the news media to be laser focused on hounding the government until it took action. Sadly, yesterday marked the death of independent media in Canada. The government and its socialist allies voted to pass Bill C-18, the Online News Censorship Act. While there are a few remaining independent media outlets, they're all under attack. Here in Ottawa, The online news outlet Blacklock's reporter is fiercely independent and entirely focused on holding the government accountable. It was Blacklock's who first revealed that Minister Ng had given a contract to a friend. Blacklock's has also been a vocal opponent of government subsidies to the news media. It was Blacklock's who revealed details about a secret meeting between 35 media outlets and the government. This type of reporting makes other media outlets nervous. So it should come as no surprise that the other media outlets would collude to eject one of Blacklock's 2 reporters from the Parliamentary Press Gallery. The Parliamentary Press Gallery claims it has nothing to do with coverage of media subsidies. They claim they had to kick out Blacklock's reporter because he was listening to parliamentary committee proceedings without a headphone. Just so we're clear, the Parliamentary Press Gallery kicked out a parliamentary reporter for having the audacity to listen to a parliamentary committee. But the Liberal government won't kick out a Liberal minister who gave 2 sole source contracts to a Liberal strategist. Welcome to Trudeau's Ottawa. While members of the Parliamentary Press Gallery do not like to hear what's going on in parliamentary committees, at least one reporter was tuned into the committee studying China's interference in Canada. That's how he learned about a document uncovered by my friend and colleague, MP Michael Cooper. This was a heavily redacted document, but the one sentence we can see is damning. The document is dated February 21st, 2020. The one sentence is, quote, investigations into activities linked to the Canadian federal election in 2019 reveal an active foreign interference network, end quote. This document was part of the daily foreign intelligence brief provided to the Prime Minister's office. Originally, Global News had reported Trudeau had been briefed on this in January of 2022. Now we know he was made aware of it 2 years earlier. And since the news first broke that 11 candidates had been targeted by this network, Trudeau has been denying he has seen any reports of China directly funding candidates. Do you see what Trudeau's doing? Nobody, not Global News, our Conservative team, have claimed that China was directly funding candidates. Trudeau is denying an allegation that no one is making. The news reports and intelligence brief we've now seen clearly indicated this was done through a network. Obviously, China did not write out a check. If any candidate were to cash a check from the communists controlling China, they'd clearly be violating election laws. The money was laundered through a network. That's the only way around donation limits. The 11 candidates targeted may or may not have known about the communist meddling, but the network of donors was clearly aware of its actions. CSIS may not be able to reveal the source of their intelligence, which makes it hard for Elections Canada to prosecute the offenders, but the government can name and shame them. Otherwise, they'll do it again and again until all trust in our democracy has been destroyed. This week, the Independent Contractors and Business Association of British Columbia announced a partnership with Crime Stoppers to offer a $100,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest of those involved in the terrorist attack at Coastal Gas Pipeline worksites. Not since the FLQ crisis has Canada seen such a large, coordinated terrorist group launched an attack. At least 20 individuals dressed in winter camouflage, equipped with axes, flare guns, smoke bombs, and gasoline, attacked the work site and destroyed $20 million worth of equipment. Coastal gas workers were threatened and terrorized. Canadians recall how anti-coastal gas pipeline protesters blockaded rail lines for weeks in 2020. These rail blockades spread across the country and presented a significant threat to the economy. Rather than invoke the Emergencies Act, Trudeau sent his minister to negotiate with the protesters. Flash forward to February 2022. While the Liberals were busy spreading conspiracy theories about Russian truckers, they were fast asleep as 20 terrorists attacked. Liberal ministers panicked over the presence of demonstrators, but last May, a former cabinet minister in the Harper government was the victim of a terrorist attack, which police have now linked to anti-pipeline protesters. The Liberals and their media allies are obsessed with people they label as far-right while ignoring real terrorists, launching real attacks on pipeline workers, tradespeople, and retired Conservative politicians. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant, wishing you a good night.